You ever have a moment where life feels so steady, so predictable, that you almost start believing nothing could ever shake it? That's where my story begins. I truly thought my wife and I were solid. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our quiet evenings where we'd just sit on the couch and talk about our day. And honestly, I loved that simplicity. It felt safe. But sometimes life changes long before you notice. I remember small shifts, her late nights at work, the way she seemed lost in her thoughts, the soft distance in her voice when she said goodnight. At first, I pushed those feelings aside. I kept telling myself it's just stress. We all go through it. Still, something inside me felt uneasy, like my heart sensed a storm forming long before my mind could understand it. If I had known how much my world was about to change, maybe I would have paid closer attention. The first real sign didn't come from anything dramatic. It came from silence. My wife had always been someone who shared everything. Little frustrations, random thoughts, even the funny things she noticed during the day. But suddenly her words grew shorter. Her smiles felt practiced. And every time I asked if she was okay, she would gently say, "I'm just tired." I tried to believe her, but the quiet moments kept piling up. She guarded her phone more closely. She turned it face down at dinner. She started taking long walks alone, saying she needed fresh air. None of these things were wrong by themselves, but together they didn't feel like her. What hurt most wasn't the distance. It was the feeling that she was carrying something heavy and didn't trust me enough to talk about it. I kept wondering if I'd done something, if I'd missed something, or if I was simply imagining it all. Still, a part of me knew the truth was getting closer. The moment the truth finally surfaced wasn't loud or chaotic. It was almost painfully still. One night, she stepped into the shower and left, her phone on the nightstand, something she hadn't done in months. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy, but when her screen lit up, I instinctively glanced over. What I saw wasn't explicit or graphic, just a simple message from a name I didn't recognize. "Did you tell him yet?" My heart stopped. I didn't open anything. I didn't scroll. I didn't need to. Those 4 words were enough to shake my entire world. When she walked out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her, she immediately knew I'd seen the notification. Her face changed, not with anger, but with a quiet sadness, like she'd been preparing for this moment. She sat beside me, hands trembling, eyes watery, and then she whispered the words that made everything inside me collapse. "I haven't been honest with you, and I'm so sorry." She took a deep breath, almost as if she needed to gather courage just to stay seated beside me. I could feel the tension in her hands as she tried to steady herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost breaking. She told me she had drifted into a connection she never meant to start. A connection that slowly pulled her away from the life we built. She admitted she had broken my trust, and for weeks, she had been carrying the weight of her choices like a shadow she couldn't escape. But then she said something I didn't expect. She told me she ended everything with that person long before the message I saw. Not because she was afraid of being caught, but because the guilt became overwhelming. She said she realized she didn't want a different life. She wanted to fix the one we had. Hearing her confession hurt deeply, but there was a sincerity I couldn't ignore. For the first time in weeks, she looked truly present and truly remorseful. In that moment, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, but also a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had a choice: to let this break me, or to decide how I wanted to move forward. It wasn't about revenge or proving anything to anyone. It was about me, my heart, and the life I wanted to live. I took a deep breath and let myself feel everything. The tears came not out of weakness, but because the hurt needed to leave. I listened to her explanation, to the remorse in her voice, and I allowed myself to acknowledge my pain. It was messy and raw, but it was honest. I decided that whatever came next would not be dictated by anger. I would take time, reflect, and consider forgiveness, not for her sake, but for mine. For the first time, I understood that my reaction could define me more than her. Mistake ever could. After that conversation, life didn't magically become easy. There were days when anger and sadness would surface unexpectedly, and I had to remind myself that healing isn't linear. Every interaction, every memory, brought a mix of emotions, and I learned that acknowledging them was the only way forward. I started reflecting on our relationship, what had worked, what hadn't, and where boundaries had been crossed. It was painful, but it also gave me clarity. I realized that her choices, as hurtful as they were, didn't define my worth. I could honor my feelings without letting resentment consume me. This period taught me the importance of self-respect, communication, and emotional honesty. I learned that betrayal doesn't have to dictate your life story. It can be a turning point. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was taking control of my narrative, not reacting blindly to someone else's actions. Eventually, I reached a point where I could look at the situation without immediate anger or hurt. I realized that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It means freeing yourself from carrying the weight of betrayal. Holding on to anger had been exhausting, and letting go allowed me to breathe again. I started focusing on rebuilding trust in myself first, recognizing my own boundaries, and being honest about what I needed from relationships moving forward. This experience showed me that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. I learned to prioritize my emotional health over others' judgments, and to value authenticity in every connection. Now I can share my story not to shame anyone, but to offer insight. Betrayal is painful, but it can also be a catalyst for personal growth.